My name is Robert, and I'm 71 years old. 14 months ago, I sold the house I lived in for 32 years, a 3-bedroom brick ranch outside Asheville, North Carolina, and I moved to a small province in the Philippines to retire on what was left of my savings. 6 months after I sold it, I called the new owners and asked if they'd sell it back to me. This is the story of why I left, why I almost came running back, and what actually happened when I tried to buy my old life back for the second time. The house on Maple Hollow Road wasn't fancy. My late wife Diane and I bought it in 1991 for $68,000. We raised 2 kids there. I built a deck off the back with my own hands in 1998, and I still remember Diane bringing me sweet tea while I measured boards twice and cut them once, the way my father taught me. Diane passed in 2019. Cancer. 18 months from diagnosis to the funeral. After that, the house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a museum. Every room had her in it. Her reading glasses were still in the drawer by the bed 2 years later. I couldn't bring myself to move them. My son Mark lived 40 minutes away in Charlotte, but he had his own family, his own life. My daughter Casey was in Ohio. I saw them at Christmas, and maybe one long weekend in the summer. Most nights, it was just me, a bowl of cereal, and whatever ball game was on. By 2024, my property taxes had climbed to just under $4,000 a year. My Social Security check was $1,940 a month. After the mortgage, I'd refinanced in 2015 and still owed a chunk. After taxes, insurance, utilities, and the medications I take for my blood pressure and my knees, I had maybe $300 left over some months less. I wasn't poor. I want to be clear about that. I wasn't eating dog food or anything dramatic like you hear about. But I was scared. Scared of what would happen if the roof needed replacing, which the contractor told me it would within 5 years. Scared of what would happen if my knees got bad enough that I couldn't manage the stairs. Scared, honestly, of just how much longer I could keep living in a house built for a family of 4 when it was just me and an empty recliner where Diane used to sit. My neighbor's son, Tyler, had been living in Cebu for work, some kind of remote IT contract job, and he came back for a visit around Thanksgiving of 2024. We got to talking on my porch, and he told me things I honestly didn't believe at first. He told me you could rent a clean, modern 2-bedroom condo in a place like Dumaguete or Dumaguete for $300 to $400 a month. He told me a full meal at a local restaurant cost $2. He told me there were retirement visas, the SERV, the Special Resident Retirees Visa, built specifically for people exactly like me, over 50 years old, with a modest pension, wanting to live out their years somewhere the cost of living wouldn't slowly strangle them. I didn't believe him, I'll be honest with you. I thought it sounded like one of those scams you hear about on the news, where some poor soul wires his life savings to a stranger in another country. So I did what I do with everything. I researched it for 4 months. I joined online expat forums. I watched hours of channels, just like this one. I found a retired Air Force veteran named Gary, who'd made the same move 3 years before me, and I called him on Zoom for almost 2 hours. He answered every uncomfortable question I had, including the one I was too embarrassed to ask anybody in person. What happens if I get sick over there? What happens if I die over there? He told me something that stuck with me. He said, "Robert, you can die slowly of loneliness, in a house that's paid off, or you can go live somewhere you can afford to actually enjoy your last 20 years." That sentence rearranged something in my head. In March of 2025, I listed the house on Maple Hollow Road. It sold in 11 days for $312,000. I remember sitting at the closing table in the title company office, my hand shaking slightly as I signed page after page, and thinking, this is either the smartest thing I've ever done, or I am about to make the worst mistake of my life at 70 years old, when I don't have 30 more years to recover from it. I gave away half my furniture to my kids and to Goodwill. I kept 2 suitcases, a small box of photographs, Diane's wedding ring, and my late father's watch. Everything else, 32 years of accumulated life, I let go of in about 6 weeks. Mark didn't take it well. He sat me down before I left and said, "Dad, you're basically running away." I told him I wasn't running away from anything. I was running towards something. I don't think he believed me. And honestly, some nights, I wasn't sure I believed myself either. I landed in Dumaguete in April of 2025. If you don't know it, it's a small coastal city on Negros Island. University town, quieter than Manila or Cebu, popular with a certain kind of retiree who wants palm trees but doesn't want the chaos of a big city. The heat hit me first. Thick, wet heat that sits on your skin the second you step off the jet bridge. Then the smell, diesel exhaust mixed with something sweet, grilled meat from a stand somewhere. Then the noise, tricycles buzzing everywhere, roosters at 5 in the morning, karaoke from 3 houses down at 11 at night. I rented a 2-bedroom condo for the equivalent of $380 a month, fully furnished, with a security guard downstairs and a view of a mango tree outside my window. My entire monthly budget, including rent, food, a housekeeper twice a week, and my medications, came to about $950. Less than a third of what I was spending in North Carolina, once you counted everything. For the first 6 weeks, I felt like I was on the best vacation of my life. I ate mangoes that actually tasted like mangoes. I got a full leg massage for $6. I made friends with a retired Canadian couple, Doug and Linda, who'd been there 9 years, and basically adopted me into their little circle of expats who met every Tuesday for lunch. Then, around month 3, something shifted. It wasn't any one thing. It was small things stacking up. I got sick, just a bad stomach bug, probably from street food I wasn't used to, and I spent 3 days alone in that condo, too weak to really take care of myself, with nobody who spoke enough English nearby to really understand how bad I felt. I called Doug and he came by with soup, which I'll never forget, but lying there at 2 a.m., sweating through my sheets, I thought about how, back home, Mark could have been there in 40 minutes. Then it was my granddaughter's dance recital. I watched it on a shaky video call, the connection freezing every few seconds, and I missed the actual moment she took her bow because the screen froze on a blurry image of the curtain. I sat there afterward on my balcony, watching the sun go down over the water, and I felt further from my family than I had ever felt in my whole life. And then there was the quiet. Not the peaceful kind, the other kind. The kind where you realize the friends you're eating lunch with on Tuesdays are friendly, but they're not the friends who watched your kids grow up, who came to Diane's funeral, who know the story behind every photograph on your wall, because those photographs were in a box in a storage unit 8,000 miles away. By month 5, I was calling Mark almost every day, and one of those calls I finally said it out loud. I said, "I think I made a mistake, son. I think I want to come home." Mark, to his credit, didn't say, "I told you so." He just said, "Let's figure it out, Dad." I found out the house on Maple Hollow Road hadn't been touched. The new owners, a young couple named the Restrepots, hadn't even moved the mailbox. On a whim, more out of homesickness than any real plan, I called their agent and asked if they'd consider selling it back. They said no, politely but firmly. They told me they'd already put $20,000 into renovating the kitchen. They loved the neighborhood, and the market had moved since I sold it anyway. Comparable houses on my old street were now listing for $340,000 to $355,000. Even if they'd wanted to sell, I would have needed almost $40,000 more than I'd sold it for, just to buy back the same walls I used to own outright. I sat with that news for about a week, and in that week, something interesting happened. Instead of spiraling further into homesickness, I actually started asking myself a harder question. Was I homesick for North Carolina? Or was I homesick for Diane? And for a version of my life that had already ended the day she died, whether I'd stayed in that house or not. I didn't move back to the Philippines defeated, and I didn't fly back to America either. I did something in between, something slower, and honestly, something harder than either of those two dramatic options would have been. The night I told Mark I wanted to come home, I didn't sleep. I lay there under the ceiling fan, listening to the geckos clicking on the wall outside my window, and I ran the numbers over and over in my head. If I flew back, I'd be renting some cramped apartment in Charlotte at close to $1,600 a month, on the same fixed income that was giving me a comfortable life in Dumaguete for a fraction of that. I'd be starting over again, except this time without a house to sell, without Diane's things around me, and without the 32 years of memory that made Maple Hollow Road feel like mine in the first place. Going home wouldn't have given me my old life back. It would have just given me a smaller, sadder version of the new one I already had. So the next morning, instead of booking a flight, I called Doug. Doug and Linda invited me over for coffee, real coffee, the kind Doug grinds himself from beans he gets at the Saturday market. And I just laid it all out on their patio. The stomach bug, the frozen video call, the recital I missed, the Restrepo's telling me no. I think I even choked up a little talking about Diane's ring, how I keep it in a little velvet box on my dresser, and some nights I just hold it and don't say anything to anybody about it. Linda didn't try to talk me out of feeling homesick. She just listened. And then she said something I've turned over in my head almost every day since. She said, "Robert, the condo isn't your home yet. You haven't let it become one." I asked her what she meant, a little defensive if I'm honest, because I felt like I'd already uprooted my whole life once, and I didn't appreciate being told I hadn't done it right. She just smiled. The way you smile at somebody you like too much to let them stay wrong. And she said, "Doug and I spent our whole first year in a rental with borrowed furniture and boxes we never opened, because some part of us thought we might go back to Alberta. The day we finally unpacked everything and hung our own pictures on the wall, that's the day this actually became home instead of an extended vacation." She was right, and it stung a little to hear it, because she'd basically described my life exactly. I'd been in that condo 5 months, renting it fully furnished, sleeping in a bed that belonged to a landlord I'd never met, eating off dishes that weren't mine, with one cardboard box still taped shut in the closet, because some part of me, some stubborn, scared part, was always half checked out, always keeping one foot on the plane back to Charlotte just in case. So I made some changes, real ones, not just talk. The first thing I did was walk into a furniture shop in town, a little family-run place with a father and 2 sons who build most of the pieces themselves out of mahogany and rattan. And I bought a bed frame, a dining table, and a reading chair that was nothing like Diane's old chair, and that was the point. I didn't want a replica of my old life. I wanted something that was actually mine, in this new place, built by my own choice, rather than whatever the landlord happened to have lying around. Then I opened that last box. It had been sitting in my closet since April, taped shut, and inside were the framed photographs. Diane on our wedding day in 1988, Mark and Casey as kids at the beach in Wilmington, the 4 of us at Casey's college graduation. I spent an entire Saturday afternoon with a hammer and a handful of nails I bought at the little hardware stall down the street, hanging every single one of them on the walls of that condo. By the time I was done, my hands were dusty. I had a small blood blister on my thumb from missing a nail twice, and the place finally looked less like a hotel room and more like somewhere a man named Robert actually lived. I also started volunteering. Linda mentioned that a small English language school near the market was always looking for native speakers to help the kids with pronunciation and conversation. And I figured, why not? I had nothing but time on my hands most afternoons. So twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I started showing up at 8 in the morning to a little concrete block schoolhouse with ceiling fans that squeaked and windows with no glass, just screens. And I sat with groups of 6 and 7 kids at a time, helping them practice sentences out of a workbook that was probably older than some of their parents. I'll tell you honestly, I didn't expect much out of it going in. I thought of it as something to fill the hours. But there was a girl in one of my Tuesday groups, maybe 9 years old, named Angel. Her mother worked cleaning rooms at one of the beach resorts, and by our 6th or 7th session, Angel could get through an entire paragraph out loud without stumbling, and she looked up at me afterward with this enormous, proud grin, like she'd just climbed a mountain. I sat there afterward on the tricycle ride home and realized something had cracked open in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. Not since before Diane got sick, honestly. A sense that I was actually useful to somebody again, instead of just a man killing time until the next doctor's appointment. The last change I made was probably the simplest, but it mattered the most. I sat down with Mark on a video call and we worked out an actual schedule. Every Sunday, 9 a.m. my time, which is 9 p.m. his time the night before, back in Charlotte. Not a random call whenever one of us happened to think of it, and the connection happened to hold up. An appointment. Something on the calendar. Something we both showed up for the same way you'd show up for church or a doctor's visit. The first few Sundays felt a little forced, a little formal, like we were performing closeness instead of actually having it. But by the second month, it turned into something real. Mark would prop his laptop up on the kitchen counter while he made his coffee, and I'd talk to him while I ate my breakfast 8,000 miles away. And it started to feel less like a call across an ocean, and more like the two of us just sitting in the same kitchen the way we used to. My granddaughter would wander into frame sometimes in her pajamas and show me a drawing, and I never again missed one of her moments the way I missed that recital. Because now I knew exactly when to be sitting in front of that screen, coffee in hand, ready. And somewhere in the middle of doing all of that, the furniture, the photographs, the volunteering, the Sunday calls, I made peace with the house on Maple Hollow Road. Really made peace with it. This time, not the surface-level peace I'd talked myself into the day I signed the closing papers. I stopped checking the county property records online to see if the Restrepo's had listed it again. I stopped mentally redecorating rooms that weren't mine anymore. One evening, sitting on my own balcony with my own coffee mug and my own reading chair, I realized I hadn't thought about that house in almost 2 weeks. And instead of feeling guilty about that, like I was betraying 32 years of memory, I just felt something closer to relief. The house had done its job. It held Diane and me and our kids for 3 decades. And now it was holding the Restrepo's and whatever life they were building in it. Both of those things could be true at the same time. Letting go of it didn't erase what it had been. It's been 14 months since I sold that house. I still live in Dumaguete, in that same condo. Except it doesn't feel like a rental anymore. It feels like mine. My monthly cost of living is still under $1,000. Rent, food, my housekeeper twice a week, my blood pressure medication, the whole thing. My Social Security check now covers everything with room to spare, and for the first time since Diane died 6 years ago, I'm actually saving money instead of watching a number in my bank account slowly shrink every single year, a little more each month, like watching sand run out of an hourglass you can't flip back over. I flew back to North Carolina for 3 weeks last Christmas, my first trip back since I left. Mark picked me up from the Charlotte airport, and, on the drive to his place, I asked him, almost without thinking about it, to swing by Maple Hollow Road. He gave me a look, the same look he gave me the day I told him I was leaving